and we're just going to try to come through with a lot of the fun things that we can remember that happened over the years.
Okay.
Joel was born in a house in Gordon, Nebraska, and I don't think there was a hospital there at the time. I think he was born right in his home. And we lived there for several years. And during that time, let's see, he was about 2 or 3 when my mother got ill. And we had a hired lady come in and take care of him, me, and of course take care of Mom. And she stayed about 3 days and said, I can't stand it any longer. I've got to go. I have dreams all night of taking that child down off the ceiling. She says, you know, I take him down off the table, off the chairs, off the piano. I'm pulling him down all the time. He likes to climb too much. He's driving me crazy. I've got to go. So, you know, he was wild. And I look at his great-granddaughter, who's now about, Mila's 2.5, and the way she goes and how she runs, and I'll bet he did the same thing. I can just see him doing that. And, of course, what's the first thing you remember, honey? Was it getting Fluffy, our dog? No, you were too little then.
Must have been, I don't know.
Yes. The dog that we had for 18 years was a little Spitz. A white dog with wavy hair and bright ears and bright eyes and so forth, and the tail that come up over the end.
Pure white.
Pure white. And a beautiful little dog. And I spent my time with that dog dressing it with his clothes. So I don't think he remembers it. But that was our childhood. And then when he was about 4, he and his very, very good friend for all of his life, Pat, that lived across the street from us, first of all, they got a little 4-year-old whose mother was having a party that day. And they had this little kid go through the house. What was it, a rope or a string? Or what did you send through the house?
Oh, to the neighbor's house with skunk tied to it? Oh, we took a fish line, fish reel, and put it in the back door, and I'm trying to remember the little kid's name that we got to take it through the house and out the front door.
McGahey, wasn't it?
No. No, that doesn't make any difference. But anyway,
all right.
We had a skunk that had been, what do you call it, when they're stuffed and mounted on a board. And this lady was having an afternoon meeting of a whole bunch of women. And the hallway had a great big open door into the living room. And so this skunk we tied to the board on one end and then started reeling it in outside. It got in front of that door where those women could see that skunk. And man, let me let out a bunch of screams and yells and whatever it was, and we got spanked real good over that, and we're disallowed to see each other for a week or 2. Punishment. That created a lot of excitement in Gordon. Yeah. Skunk in the house. Oh, yeah.
Well, he liked to take everything apart, no matter what it was. If he could find anything it could take apart, he took it apart. So Mother said at church one morning, if any of you have a broken clock, that you know this can't be fixed, or anything else that can't be fixed, that Joe can take apart, I would really like to have it. It's what he wants to do more than anything. And he started about 4 or something, taking things apart. And the neighbors, everybody would bring things in for him to take apart, and then for Mother to find a way to get rid of, you know. Then he started in building different things, models.
Yeah.
And the thing he liked to do a bit more than anything was airplanes.
Well, I was older than this little kid, though. I was
Well, you did that by the time you were 6. You started doing
Well,
models.
I suppose, but...
And you did little models at first.
Well,
and, of course, you
right.
had all of those toys to build things with. All those wooden things that you build houses and, you know.
Yeah, Lincoln logs or whatever.
Lincoln logs.
And then what some of the other
Rector set.
Erector sets, yeah.
All of those things he had. Everything Mother could get her hands on, he had. And then all of those models of every kind of thing. Plus, about that time, they built a stairway that went up to our attic, and they turned the attic into 2 bedrooms. So we each had our own bedroom. Before that, we had one room with the twin beds in it. The house was just a 2-bedroom house. And we can't figure out where everybody stayed and how they slept. We've been trying to figure that out. Because Uncle Will lived with us for quite a while after Aunt Charlotte died. Where did we stay housing? We don't know. Where
2-bedroom house.
Unless he slept in the basement or something.
There was no basement.
At that time, no.
That's right. There was no basement at that time. Later there was, but not at that time.
But not when we had Uncle Will. Okay. And But anyway, Mother fixed him a beautiful room. She wallpapered the ceiling blue, and then had these beautiful silver stars all the way through it. And then he had probably a dozen planes that hung down from it. His whole ceiling was filled with all those things that he had made. So it was I loved to go into his room. I was forbidden. You know, I couldn't go in there. But it was sure a nice room. And I know he had a buffalo robe.
Oh my gosh, that old buffalo robe was handed down to families for years that I had on my bed. A buffalo skin, tan, soft.
With the fur.
With the fur.
Yes.
That was on my bed.
Yeah.
In the wintertime. The house had no heat up there, so.
Well, we had heat downstairs, and we had those radiator type things that it could come up, so it wasn't that cold. However, I can remember before they put the new windows in, that every morning we would have frost all around our face and on our quilts and so forth. But they finally put a lot of insulation in the ceiling and in the walls and new windows, but that had to come a little later. We had to freeze to death for a few years. But what did you do next? What was this? Oh, I can remember us going to the lake one time. You tell that story.
About what lake?
The Sand Hill Lake, where we used a seine and took out, that it was going dry one hot summer.
We were older then. The Fairheads owned a lake that was heavily stocked with bullhead fish. Do you know what a bullhead is? Now, that's a catfish with thorn.
Okay.
And so we would go over there sometimes on Sundays and have big fish fries. We had a seine. We'd go out and seine in a bunch of these fish after we tried to catch them on a hook for a while, and then we'd train them and bring them in, and all the guys and the kids sat around and clean them because they had to be skinned. They were not a fish that you scraped, you skinned it.
Yeah.
And
Tell me how
so
you did
then
that.
we had,
You took a board and pounded a nail down through the head, and then split the skin and pulled it off.
Right.
There was no way you could skin them without having them.
Right, or you had to have the nail on the board.
Mm-hmm.
So we skinned the fish, and then my dad somewhere had, either that or my uncle had found an old fender out of a car and took it and cleaned it up real good. And then my dad would bring down 5 gallons of oil, not of, mostly of probably, it would be fat from the pigs, because we did our own at the store.
Butchering.
And we'd bring that down and put in the fender and build a fire under it, and then we'd deep fry these fish. No, they were just very, very good. And that's where we used to go swimming, and that's when Eleanor got borrowed her mother's bathing suit.
No, I was Aunt Grace's. We'd forgotten to take one
Oh.
for me. And Aunt Grace was a pretty good-sized woman.
With big boobs.
And they tied it up on the shoulders. to
Right,
try
and
to-
so anyway, Beth, Eleanor, when she was out swimming, this front of the suit was out like this, and one of those bullheads got in there with her thorns, and, of course, she started to scream, and my dad was I think my dad was in the water too, I'm not sure, but
No,
if
he
not,
was on a raft. They were out there
oh, that's
climbing.
right, they were on
And
the
he
hay
jumped off
rack
of the
out,
raft.
way out in the water. And he jumped off and come running to try to find out what happened to her, and her boobs were all bleeding, and everything was happening at once. They finally got her to shore and got the fish out.
Who got the fish out?
I did, Gerald.
Gerald.
My cousin Gerald
Just my
fished
same age.
down in
And
and
we
took
were about
fish out of her.
9 or 10. Oh, they've given Gerald problems all of his life because of that. They have teased
Right.
him over him reaching into my bathing suit.
Yeah, they cleaned out Eleanor's boobs. Anyway, that was out in the lake.
Yeah.
The name of the lake was Pruden.
Mm-hmm.
Big, nice lake that's kind of about half dry now. It
Oh, it depends
kinda
on
dry.
the weather.
Right. Yeah, if there's lots of rain, it's wet, so.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, where's Pat? She was coming up.
She was.
I heard she was gonna stop by.
I did. I have no idea when she was going to do that, though.
Well, she can listen to it.
Yeah, she can.
Or read it after you've got it.
Yeah.
Let's see, as we got older, we didn't do as much together, did we?
No.
Joe, the next thing is Joe. Dad died in 41. He was 41. He died in 39. And Joe was, 14 at that time?
13 or 14.
13, something like that. And so he and Mother were home alone because I was in college. So dear Joe wanted a gun. And that was your birthday present or something.
So I was in junior in high school, and I wanted a higher caliber gun. We had lots of coyotes back in those days.
Uh-huh.
And we would go coyote hunting. Now, the ranchers wanted to get rid of these coyotes because they would eat the baby calves as they were born. And so anyway, just about everybody in the world had one of these guns, and it was called a 25-20 Winchester, I think. And so I got it, I think, I must have been a freshman in high school, or maybe before even. But anyway, I got this gun for a present, and my buddy across the street and I come home from school, and it had come in the mail, and so we put it together over our noon hour and kept looking at it. Boy, we wanted to shoot it real bad, so went out the back of the house where the city, the town was not a very big town. You could shoot high, and the bullet wouldn't hit anything.
Well, there was a hill there, too.
Pardon?
There's kind of a hill there, too.
Well,
no houses up in that area.
Right, no houses, so I decided I'd shoot the gun, and I put it right in town now, school, at noon at school, and fired that gun, and believe it or not, the projectile hit the power line, and dropped the power line and put the whole north end of Gordon out of lights. And of course, when we saw that, we hid the gun and run to school. But I guess about 3 hours later, here come the president of the power company there, or not the president, but he was run the power company. Come up,
the two together.
come up to get Pat and I and drug us out of there, and we got a good scolding and a good thing, and the policeman come by, and he sat there and scolded us all for firing a gun in the city. So we got away with it.
Oh, yeah, and then when
Right.
I came home from the service, that fellow from the power plant, first one he hired was this one.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep, I went to work for him.
yeah. So, they must have known that...
Oh, there's a spider on you.
Pardon?
Right there.
Oh. What is
Anyway.
it? It's a spider.
Spider.
A spider?
Yeah.
There's a spider on you.
Right.
Oh, well, thank you.
So,
I
Welcome.
think he's gone. It was one of those little black jumping spiders there.
Oh, really?
There.
Yeah, it's right there.
Step on him.
There we go.
Oh, he's quick.
oh,
There we go.
yeah.
Whatever, he's not
Thank
going to
you.
bother anyone.
They don't need any of their webs in this place. But, what else can you think of that was real funny? Or even happened to us?
Well, let's see, I don't know. I can't remember a lot of things that happened back in school days. We used to go hunting a lot and fishing and just typical things a kid would do.
I remember I took one of the, I think it was the things the car that we delivered groceries in, and it was
No, yeah, the old Model A, right.
or Model A.
On.
Okay, I took
Yeah.
it to Merriman. For some reason or another, I don't know why I went to the Merriman Lakes, just right out of the city of Merriman. And of course it was sand hills and I got stuck. And I couldn't get back home. And Dad had to come and get me. And I hadn't asked permission to buy. That's always been an embarrassment that he had to come 30 miles in order to get me out of that.
How'd you get in contact with your dad?
I don't know. 'cause
You
we
didn't have cell phones.
No?
No, but I know that he came and got, oh, hey, maybe we walked over the hill to Moreland. We had cousins.
The Marlins were close by where
Yeah,
we got
they could have
stuck.
come and brought horses.
They could have come
They
and
didn't
pulled
have
out with
anything that would have
horses.
pulled it out.
Right.
I don't think they had tractors in those days.
No, they didn't. None of them had tractors.
Mm-mm.
And
Oh, the story you must tell next.
then Uncle Charlie and my dad bought me an old Model T. Uncle Charlie knew where it was, and so they went and got it, and they paid $15 for it. And the old Model T, and Charlie brought it back to stop and fixed it up. And then I
They didn't make you fix it?
well, I helped.
I was going
Right,
to say,
yeah,
that was
but-
the idea. Was
But
that-
Charlie knew what had to be done to
Yeah.
it. It wasn't much. It was a good old Model T, though. I drove it for a long time. Just a kid before. Now, that was before we had to have a license at 16 years old. I think I was 14, probably. And the reason they got me that was my dad had the feed yard. We run a grocery store. And the feed yard was about 1.5 miles away. And I had to take sometimes feed from the store to the feedlot where we fattened our cattle before we butchered them. And so they bought me that so I'd have transportation so I could go back and forth to the feedlot in the summertime when I was out of school. And I hung around the store all summer long. And so that's where the old Model T come in. Had it for a long time. Today I got 2 of them. Not the same ones. No, just old cars.
You got any questions?
I do not.
Did you have to crank that?
Oh, of course you had to crank
Yeah,
it.
that's what I heard.
Right.
And lots of people would get their teeth knocked
That's
out.
right. The old Model T, when you cranked it, would kick. They'll crank up front and come back and smack you. And so they'd knock your teeth out if you got down too close. So when you gripped the crank, you didn't grip it like this. You gripped it without your thumb being around it. That way, if it kicked, it come out of your hand. Well, otherwise, if you had your hand all the way around it, when it kicked your thumb, it all come back together. So, and a lot of people got broken arms and stuff like that from them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you just gripped it without without your whole hand wrapped around the crank. So,
Now all you do is push a button.
no, isn't that great? Now all you do is push the button.
Yep.
So,
Joe, did you have to blow the gas line out occasionally? That
Well-
old Model T I had, I'd have to blow the gas line out
Right,
every
uh-huh.
time I went, 20, 30 miles or something. And then we also had to set the spark plugs. You had to keep those balanced, and if one of them, it would chug, and so you had to
right.
you had to learn quite a bit of mechanics to run those old things. And that's why Dad let us have them.
Make you learn mechanics.
Right.
Yes, and learn how to change the tires, or wheels rather. You had to take the whole wheel off, and you had to, you didn't have an inner tube. You had to put what do they call them? The pads that we put in the tire?
Oh, boot.
A boot. You
Right.
had to put a boot in the tire, and then you had to put it back on. So
And then you had to pump it up with a hand pump,
yes, you did.
which was always hard.
Yeah, real hard.
Right.
Well, I think
So-
that's all of our younger stuff. I went to Oregon. Dad died in '39, and I went to Chadron that first year because I was close to home and I could go home with Mother alone. And besides that, I got lonesome. The first year away,
Yeah.
you kind of do. Well, I did it even after I went to Oregon. The next summer, Aunt Leela, who was my dad's stepsister, or foster sister, whatever, invited me to come out to Oregon to visit her. So I went out on the train and had quite an experience doing that. And but she, when I think almost the first week I got there, said, "Pack your bag. Let's go to the out for the weekend. Let's go to the coast or something to do something. Get out." So of course I went with my little bag and thing and other, and we went south of Salem where she was living. Maybe 30, 40 miles, and there's a beautiful falls down there, Silver Falls. And so we stopped to see at Silver Falls, and we got there, and here was a whole bunch of kids from the Westminster House at Oregon State. They were having a retreat that weekend, staying overnight and one thing and another, and they asked me to join. And Aunt Lee said, "Well, why don't you?" So I joined the whole group, and they were all Oregon State kids, and boy, by the time that thing was over, or the summer was over, because I kept seeing a bunch of them that lived there in Salem and one thing and another, well, I was all set to go to Oregon State. So I stayed at Oregon State and took my next 2 years, and met my husband, and I'm still in Oregon after all these years. That's how I got there.
Wow.
But I have a feeling now, and I didn't ever think of that for 20 years after it happened, but I really think that Mother and Aunt Lee, neither one of them liked the fellow I was going with from Chadron. And they thought it might be good for me to get away for a while.
Well, I'm sure that's right. I agree with that. Your boyfriend, Norman Stell, as I remember.
No?
Right, yeah, none of us liked him.
Yeah.
Not even me.
Yeah.
He tied me up
He did?
while you and him were doing something, and I was giving you a bad time, and so he took me up in my bedroom and tied my hands and tied my feet and
I didn't
threw
know
me
that.
on my bed. And I was there for a couple hours all tied up and couldn't get loose.
Oh,
Right.
I never heard that before.
You
If
didn't
I
know,
did,
but
I
that's
forgot
what he
it.
did to me. That's why I never did like him. He tied me up so damn tight. There was just no way I could get loose. So Anyway.
Now you're getting some of the...
Yeah, don't do that to any girlfriend's brothers.
Got it.
Just don't do it.
Dating advice 101.
He was quite a
Oh.
tease.
Quite a what?
Tease.
Oh.
I remember...
Oh yeah, I'd give it a bad time.
Oh, awful bad time. One of the girls, or several of the girls, were over at the house one time, and they said, "Eleanor, how in the world do you put up with that?" And, you know, I kind of ignored all of it. But when he was born, Mother said, now this is your baby. And I helped take care of him all along. He was my baby. He still is. I think she didn't want us to be jealous of one another. And she thought that was a good way to keep us from being jealous. And I can remember laying on the floor, both of us stretched out reading the funny papers or a book or something to him from the time I learned to read. That was the way we did it. Flat on our tummies, right. The living room floor. Okay.
So I thought your mother was going to come by, but do you have Charlie Irwin's book? Have you got it? Have you read it?
Yeah, 75 Years in the Saddle?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
no, that's Joe Christie's.
No, that's Christie's. Which one's Charlie's book?
I didn't know.
Do you have any of the tapes?
That's your
grandfather. Oh yeah, I think we do. I don't know where they are. I think either we have it or Pat has it.
Right.
I have it.
Now Pat's got a book that about Charlie Irwin.
Uh-huh.
And if you don't have that, you should have that.
See, he was my father's brother.
My wife read it and put it on tape so Charlie could sit there and listen to it. So, I don't know, does Pat have a bunch of tapes in the basement?
She probably does.
She does.
Well, you need to find out, because there's a tremendous amount of family history that's in Uncle Charlie's book, and then also the tapes, and there's also a lot of stories in the tapes about where people just read the book and gave it to Charlie, because Charlie was going blind and couldn't see, so everybody read things on tape for him, and then he'd play the tapes.
Honey, he wasn't born blind. He turned blind from macular degeneration.
Well, it's probably a lot of it, too, is from he was welding in the shop before we had good welding equipment and stuff like that in our shop, in his shop in Gordon.
Yeah.
And he had quite a shop there, and then he sold implements. I guess you know that. So anyway, that's what come from Gordon, Nebraska, and I hope that you can find. If you don't have Charlie's book, it is written and it is on tape.
Uncle Charlie was, Dad was born in 1897, and Uncle Charlie was born in 1903, and he was about 6 when they were taken from their home. The story I told you last night. And Dad was about 10, and so if he started from the beginning, you'd find out a lot of things about his mother and his home, and maybe, I don't know, although he was so young, I don't know what he knew.
I should probably try to track down those tapes. Hopefully they weren't...
Well, if you can track down the book, you'll have a lot of it.
Yeah, well, my hope is that, because, like, Pat's house, like, when she was away on a trip, like, her toilet leaked, and there's a bunch of water damage in her house, so I hope that they didn't get hurt or destroyed in that.
That's right.
Right.
So, or the flood. So, like, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Well, I hope the files didn't get bad. Of course, I have a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, my only fear is that perhaps it might have either been accidentally thrown out when, like, Pat was cleaning out her house after most of it got destroyed in her big water damage. I'm not too afraid of the flood.
Did you turn this off?
What? I'll turn it off if you want.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff was ordered, but we catered to the Indians a lot, and would sell them all kinds of stuff. But it was very irritating. When an Indian wanted to buy some hamburgers, they'd buy 10 cents for it. Okay, and a little bit later,
pound, kid.
They would buy another 10 cents worth of hamburger. So they didn't know how to make the money last.
Yeah.
So they'd buy a little bit of this, a little bit of that, then come back and buy some more of this, some more of that. It was very irritating, but that's the way they did it.
And then if they ran out of money, they would take
Oh,
their chaps or something they were wearing and leave it for Dad and say they'll come back and get it and pay for it? Do you know
Yeah.
that room in the back that he had all that stuff in?
well, when my dad died, we had 3 or 4 sets of Indian dance wear, you know, with the feathers and all that.
Yeah.
And we had some, what we call Golden Boy rifle. It was a rifle that the Indian had that Custer did not have. I think there was 3 of them in the storage room there. We called it the egg room at the time.
Yeah, we have
And,
to, Joe and I, you'd have to go back
that
and...
was stuff was stored in there.
In front of a
Right after that,
wooden thing that
Yeah.
had a hole in it, and so that you could see if there was little chickens in it or blood in them or anything, so that the eggs were good. You called it candling eggs, and that was one of our jobs.
those things disappeared shortly after my dad died. And whether the Indians come back, they were hawked. Whether the Indians come back and paid and got them back, or I don't know, but when I wanted them, they weren't there. I'd love to have one of them Golden Boy rifles. To see Custer was still shooting the old hand load, or the muzzle loader.
Uh-huh.
Right. So,
Well, the great or what family fellow on your grandmother's side was in the Civil War,
Yeah.
and I think you knew that.
Yeah, I've heard about it,
Yeah.
vaguely. I
Yeah.
haven't heard about it a lot. Like, which side was he on, the Confederate?
Well, when you want to get into his family,
Yeah.
I will get out the records.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's easier than, because
Yeah, just
otherwise
trying
it's
to
too
remember.
easy to forget just exactly when something happened or...
Yeah.
But his gun blew up on him, and
That was a kind of a common occurrence, wasn't
yes,
it?
it was, because they had to pound the powder into
Yeah.
it, you know.
Yeah, and the wad would get stuck, or...
Yeah, but it burned his hand and his face and one thing and another when that happened. And he also drank some water out of a creek that had a, I don't know, something kind of a thing that he had the rest of his life, and they couldn't kill it because it would kill him, anything that was strong enough to kill whatever that was, and he had diarrhea the rest of his life.
Oh,
Wouldn't that be fun?
no,
No.
it would not be fun.
No, but that's
So-
story I've heard about him. But I
so
never
what did you
knew
know
him.
about your Charlie Owens shooting a hole in each foot?
You told me that
Golden Boy
story
rifle.
once, but it was a while ago.
You want
Well,
it again?
Yeah, sure, I'll take it again.
well, my dad and Charlie and little Joe, me, and the guy that worked at the post office, we all went out to a lake hunting, and
That's the
That's
Golden
the
Boy
Golden
rifle.
Boy rifle.
there's a Golden Boy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a beautiful rifle.
Yeah, I know,
Slim and
but
it's a...
yeah, they're very valuable right now. They're
Oh, I'll
not
bet they
all
are.
that many of them left. So, yeah, that was in my dad's storeroom when he died. But he'd hawk them from the Indians, you know. The Indians run out of money, and so they'd bring something down, and he'd give them $10 or $25
Worth the groceries.
Right.
groceries, and put this stuff in the storeroom until they got their next allotment check, and pay. Hi, Miss Pat.
Hi,
Hi, Pat.
how are you
Pull-
doing?
pull up
How
that
are
red
you
blocker.
doing? How are you
guys
doing? We're doing
Good. How about you?
Good. Trying to stay cool.
Yeah.
Joe was just about to tell a story of Uncle Charlie shooting his toe off.
Oh, that's Charlie Irwin. Didn't
Yeah, that was a long time ago, but then nevertheless we went hunting, and back in those days there was we called them rat houses, and muskrats built big houses.
Uh-huh.
And so you'd wade out into the lake and get on one of the rat houses and sit there and wait for the ducks to come in. And so anyway, we were all out there hunting, and the ducks were beginning to fly pretty good. All of a sudden, Charlie yelled, "Noah, I shot my foot." Noah just laughed. That was so funny to think. Charlie said he shot his foot. Well, and Charlie yelled back and said, "No, I really did shoot my foot." And so anyway, my dad jumped up and run through the water and run over there to where Charlie was, and could see Charlie's foot was bleeding like heck, and picked him up and carried him out and got him carried over on the edge of the lake, and tried to see what the heck what had happened, and he was bleeding real bad. So my dad got a tourniquet on his foot so he wouldn't bleed to death between there and the doctor. And so Jimmy McGraw was the other guy that was with us. So we all run to the car and left our guns, left everything lay right where we were, and run. And so Jimmy McGraw jumped behind the wheel to drive, and I'll be darned in the sand if he didn't get that truck or car stuck.
Oh, gee.
Oh, and Charlie in the back seat bleeding, with the tourniquet on his leg. My dad taking care of it. Of course, you might know my dad was a Navy nurse, and so my dad knew what to do. But that was beside the truck. The car was stuck, and we couldn't get out. And there was a ranch house probably, quarter to a little further away. So my dad turned Charlie over to Jimmy McGraw to take care of, and my dad run all the way from there to that farmhouse, and they got a team of horses and come and pull us out of the sand and got Charlie back to Gordon, where they got him up to, I'm going to say Dr. Overmess's office.
And
Was that right?
up to, he was in the second floor of downtown old building.
Yeah, got him up there, and they got his toe, whatever it was, cut off and stopped bleeding, and so
He was
the
missing
boots,
a toe. He was missing a toe.
right,
Then on.
the boots that Charlie had on, that he shot, hung out in Charlie's repair shop there for years, and I'm awful sorry that I didn't gather it up.
You sure it isn't hanging in your garage?
I don't have it, and
But you left something out. When Dad was bringing him out from having those toes fixed, the doctor had given him what they call laughing gas, and I don't think they use it at all anymore.
Yeah, they use it, but they use a gas by the same name, but I think it's a different kind.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, Uncle Charlie was laughing hilariously all the way down those steps when he was trying to get down the steps with that foot. And that was the thing I heard about so much. Then they kidded him about the way he laughed at that.
So my dad and I went back the next day to gather up the guns and the stuff that we had left. Because we just threw everything down just where we were and run. Yeah, Charlie's gun was out on the rat house. I think I still have it.
Well, you have.
Oh yeah, you do. I saw that.
Right.
I saw it once. That's what caused you to tell me the story the first time.
That Charlie shot a hole in his foot with that gun.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to have driven around the sandhills to appreciate why they got stuck. You do not get off any beaten track to this day in the sandhills because you don't know
what you're going to run into. Yeah.
Remember when we went over there for the elder hospital? They were still telling you don't wander. You may see a road going that way, but if you may think it's a shortcut, but you take a chance of getting stuck in the sand.
You get stuck.
So
Yeah, that loose
Or you're going
sand.
to hit a high center or something. You're not.
Well,
Yep.
right.
A lot of high centers. Our cars had to be up pretty high. None of these newfangled cars could have gotten along on those roads.
No, we were just asking Noah if you still got any of those old tapes and stuff from Charlie's house.
I'm sure I do.
Would they have been damaged in the rain, when your
What about
basement was flooded?
Charlie's book? You got that around somewhere?
Charlie Irwin's book?
Mm-hmm.
I've never read it. I didn't know he'd ever done a book.
Oh, I don't think he ever did a book.
Yep, he did.
He dictated it to Aunt Elsie.
And
Oh, yeah, but I don't think, it's probably in longhand. I don't think anything ever
well, anyway,
got put together.
Beth got it and read it on tape for Charlie.
Okay.
So Charlie could play all of his own stuff back
Okay.
that he'd written. So, but Beth put it on tape, I know that.
Well, then it's in writing someplace.
Elsie had it down in longhand, I remember seeing it.
I think you're right, it was in,
Someone
that's why Beth read it.
And maybe Elsie died before she got it put together. Because now that you mention that, I remember this.
Oh, boy, I'd sure like to read it, because there'd probably be a lot of stuff in there I didn't know
I don't know,
about his parents.
Charlie
all that
would,
stuff.
or Dennis would try to record Charlie's stories when we were fishing in Canada. He would take a hidden tape recorder. So those tapes are around somewhere. They're not very good. They're kind of hard to understand, but they're around.
Yeah, it would be nice, if you're going to do some writing, it would be nice to have some of those stories to...
Yeah, I think I know where most everything is. I just have to go and dig them out.
Well, I thought it was funny I had never had a chance to read it, but that's why it was...
No, it was...
Yeah.
That's why it probably has been
I
longhand.
remember seeing that yellow pad.
Because Elsie didn't type, so...
Well, I think she probably did.
Did Elsie type?
She could do everything else. Surely she could type.
Yeah,
I don't
you're
know.
right, she could do everything else.
Yeah, but like I said, I just remember that notepad with a bunch of stuff on it. And some of it, she'd write some here and then there, and because I think he thinks something else or she thinks something else to put in. And so, yeah, I vaguely remember, and I didn't remember it was Beth that took it, tried to put it together. But they're probably all the same stories that are on the tapes.
No, I wouldn't,
Well, maybe some of the same stories, but there'd also be a lot of things that we didn't know about his mother and father and his time in Canada. He worked in Alaska so many years.
Well, he
And
was
a lot
up
of those
on ADAC for 9 months.
well, during the
Two different
war.
times.
No, he didn't get to go back the second time.
He didn't.
No, he went up there hoping that he'd get hired back. I
But
guess
he-
they only had 9-month stints and they'd send him home. And
Right.
so then he went back up and waited around, never got hired. So then he went to Greenland. And he went to Greenland a couple times to work on construction up there.
Oh, okay.
Up there.
I didn't
And
realize.
that's when Dennis was in high school. Because he was never around when Dennis was in high school or in early college. And then when he came back, they bought all those rentals, and that was their business.
Yeah.
Maintaining those and renting them and managing them.
And Elsie bought a lot of those during the war.
Well,
they were
no,
gone.
they didn't move over here for 45. So they started buying them after that. Charlie made enough at ADAC to buy the house. And then he made enough in Greenland to start buying real estate. I don't know what all they bought, because they bought stuff and sold it before I even came around. I think they had an apartment house somewhere, and I think that got to be a pain, and so they sold that, and maybe that's when they bought the bakery and the top hat. And then, as each house would come up for sale across the street, but that was in my lifetime. I mean, when I was married to Dennis, so that was 50s and 60s. And then when the hippies came in, and you weren't allowed to screen anybody except the ones in your house, they started selling them off. And then I think that's when they brought the land out in Kiowa County.
That's when he went down and bought that land down in South Colorado.
Kiowa County.
Right.
So, yeah, that was, she did not want to hassle with, I guess, maybe rich kids, hippies would come with the money. If they had the money to pay the down payment on the rent, then you had to get a license. All kinds of, the city was putting all kinds of stuff on it.
Well, I know how they got the farm. That was left to them by Mrs. Irwin.
Well, that's the one in Nebraska.
Yes, the one in
But
Nebraska.
in Colorado, we don't know why they bought that land.
It wasn't productive land.
It's the most desolate part of Colorado you have ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
But the only thing I can think of is that maybe somebody put a bee in their bonnet that it would go into the CRP program. And so that's been very lucrative.
It's still there. Been there all these years.
Well, this will be about 25 years. It'll be 30. It's the third time they've been able to put it in for 10 years. So.
And that house they bought had apartments in it. We had an apartment upstairs where my mother and I and Tony St. John lived.
Yeah.
And then there was an apartment in the basement where I think college girls lived. And then around behind, to the other side of the basement, there was another apartment.
Well, they made that out of the garage.
Yes, you're right.
They made a dormitory.
That was made out of the garage.
With bunk beds for the veterans as they came home and were on the GI Bill. So that garage. So yeah, so they had income right away on the house, and then Charlie made a couple.
And they invested it wisely.
Right.
Yeah.
All the time. And then they managed it themselves. Elsie never went back to teaching. She just managed those. But I think, they'd clean them, they'd paint them, they'd remodel them, they'd repair, whatever. Charlie could do anything on that line of work.
Right.
So the two of them worked on that. But Barbara and I never could figure out why they bought that land in Kiowa County. But we're just lucky that it was in the CRP. We're paid not to grow wheat.
Oh.
Yeah.
What does CRP stand for?
Let's see.
What did they pay you for?
That's land that's not productive.
They wouldn't grow wheat in the first place?
It was called marginal.
Oh, okay.
And so there was a little bit of farming on it, but the crops weren't very good. So CRP, let's see. Something crop restoration program, probably.
Oh, probably, yeah.
Something like that.
And you're just paid not to grow wheat.
You're paid not to grow wheat.
So you're paid to not do anything.
Well, you have certain restrictions. You got to make sure there's no weeds. You can't have, what do you call the stuff that...
Cattle.
No, you can't have weeds that, will...
Oh, the fences to your neighbors.
Well, anything that's invasive. You can't have an invasive weed. So it has to be grassland. And then this last time we put it in the CRP, they had to replant a bunch of it because they want to attract certain birds and certain wildlife. Now, you're not even allowed to graze it, but you have to maintain it. But there is some land being grazed that we own down there that you're allowed to.
You have to maintain the fences too, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I knew.
So we have a manager that does all that. So he's pretty good. And we have a manager in Nebraska too. Keeps track of the farmer. So. Now my dad invested, his dad had 260-acre fields, and then my dad bought a third one, and so he incorporated that between his wife and his 3 daughters. So now my 2 sisters and I have the land in Iowa, which is the most productive land in Wright County, Iowa. You can't believe it's black as oil. And we haven't had a crop failure yet. Somehow when the hail comes through, it goes north or it goes east or.
How lucky can you get?
I remember that in Illinois though, the soil was black.
Yes.
It was just
That's what it is
so
on my,
rich.
yeah. The Pine Ridge is the same way, yeah.
Is that right?
Do they farm up there?
They do.
What do they farm?
Just crops and
I know, but corn, wheat,
a little bit of everything.
do they irrigate?
Some of them do.
That overhead stuff?
Yeah, some of them do.
Because Nebraska, I think, is pretty much dry land.
Yeah.
So if they're having a good year, they can grow corn and milo. And then they'll grow wheat, winter wheat. But I think they don't irrigate out there in
The
Nebraska.
Sandhills is very interesting country.
Yeah.
Have you been up
I have
before?
been in the Sandhills.
We
Good.
went to Pine Ridge.
Yeah, I went
You're
walking
out-
in the Sandhills.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Yeah. Grandfather said that when they first came in and the Ogallala aquifer was really full, they could dig down any place in their meadows with almost their hands and hit water. And of course now you have to go down 150, 200 feet in order to hit water. You have to really have a drilling outfit to put in a well. But that, I just think it's so sad that they've let that. And now they're wanting to put all that gas from Canada, and they want
Yeah.
to go right through all of that land, you know, right past our ranch, down. And I am so opposed to that because that's all Ogallala landfill, and all it would take would be just one nice big leak in
Yeah.
that thing to wreck all.
The
And that
Sandhills are
Ogallala
so
thing
beautiful.
goes
They
from
are, they're
Wyoming
amazing.
Yeah.
to all of Nebraska, parts of Kansas. It's one of the largest ones in the world.
Aquifers, you're talking about?
And to live,
But it's beginning to dry
as
up.
nice as that.
Yeah. You know it's drying up. It's not drying
what
up,
she
but
said.
it's totally overpumped.
It's
Yeah,
overpumped,
it is.
no question about it.
It is.
Because there's a lot of people that are watering their lands on it.
It
And
doesn't even reach the sea anymore, if I remember right.
What?
The aquifer.
I don't know that it ever
They
did.
never,
Oh, yeah.
just in the middle of
No,
the U.S.
It probably maybe helped feed some of the rivers that went through. The Niobrara
Yeah.
went through, the Mississippi even goes through parts
Well,
of
the
it.
South Platte,
And the Platte.
feeds a bunch of that.
So there was a lot of rivers that were feeding it, but those rivers don't have the water in it they used to have either.
Mm-hmm.
But gee, I hope we can keep them from putting that in that pipe over all that
I
land.
thought they changed the route a little bit. Of the
They tried
pipeline.
to, but they didn't miss the Ogallala.
Ogallala. You mean
The
Sandhill?
Ogallala aquifer.
Well, they're not going to go that deep with the pipeline, are they?
Yeah, right straight through the middle of it.
I thought they put it on top of the land.
They do put it on top of the land, but it just takes one leak to go
Well, I
down
see
in.
it. You're talking about the leak,
Contaminated.
not the pipe. You're talking
And
about
you
the
know
leak.
there's going to be one,
Oh, there'll always be one.
because there's so many of them in Canada and
Yeah.
and
Oh,
Alaska
really?
now.
I'm not gonna answer that.
You're just independent from that.
Well, just because somebody decides to call me doesn't mean I get to talk to me.
I know.
Yeah. Hello.
I know what you
Hi.
Hi, we have a big group today.
We've invaded.
Are you after this, Nan?
Yeah, I just wanted to check in. I'm the physician assistant with Dr.
Oh,
Tim
okay.
here. So just kind of see how things are going this week. Sounds like a lot of issues have improved. You're almost at the end